Something I see a lot of in semen retention circles is this idea that it's virtuous to be celibate. That somehow celibacy is the highest path, the most direct path to God. In The Perfect Matrimony, Samael Aun Weor actually has a very critical view of celibacy. Now, at first I thought this was very judgmental and wrong. I thought it was wrong to denounce someone who chose a celibate life. But the further I go on this path, the more convinced I become that rather than being some kind of superior spiritual path, it could in fact be the case that willingly choosing long-term celibacy is actually an inferior path. Not only inferior, speaking spiritually, but it creates the conditions by which we can fall into greater error. And this is what we see with many people acting out who have vowed to live a life of celibacy. So we're going to continue with the book here and go into a bit more detail with this. We are reading from chapter 4, The Abyss. Those who hate sex live in the infrasexual sphere of Lilith. Monks, anchorites, preachers of pseudo-esoteric type sects, pseudo-yogis who hate sex, nuns, etc. All such infrasexual people, by the very fact of being infrasexual, are usually in affinity with people of intermediate sexuality. Because of this, it is not difficult to find homosexuality in many convents, religions, sects, and schools of the pseudo-esoteric type. Infrasexuals consider them to be people immensely superior to those of normal sexuality. Consider themselves, I think it should say. They look with contempt upon people of normal sexuality, considering them to be inferior. All the taboos and restrictions, all the prejudices that presently condition the lives of people of normal sexuality were firmly established by infrasexuals. Very interesting point he's making there. The most serious thing is that they consider themselves superior to people of normal sexuality. They feel that they are super transcendent, and they reach the point of seducing people of normal sexuality and convert them into their followers. In our mission of divulging Gnostic esotericism, we have had the opportunity to study infrasexuals. Often we hear them saying phrases such as the following: "You Gnostics are egotists because you only ever think about your kundalini and sexual magic. You are sexual fanatics. Sexual magic is purely animal. Sex is something very gross. I am a spiritualist and I hate all that is materialistic and gross. Sex is filthy. There are many paths to reach God. I live only for God and I am not interested in that rubbish about sex. I practice chastity and hate sex, etc. This is precisely the language of infrasexuals. Always self-sufficient, always with the pride of feeling superior to people of normal sexuality. An infrasexual woman who hated her husband said to us, "I would only practice sexual magic with my guru." She made this statement in the presence of her husband. That woman did not have a sexual relationship with her husband, apparently because she hated sex. Nonetheless, she accepted the practice of sexual magic, but only with her guru. She had an affinity with the guru because he was also an infrasexual. This is the saint already mentioned in this chapter, the one who enjoyed proposing unnatural sexual union to his female devotees. Now, I find this interesting because I remember reading The Coiled Serpent, which is essentially a book about celibacy, the virtue of celibacy. And I remember the author cautioning devotees, people walking the path of celibacy, that they should never assume that they are invulnerable to lust, even at these very high levels when they've become gurus and they have students. And he gave several stories of gurus sleeping with their students. And what Samael's explaining here, I see as a confirmation that as you walk that path, attempting to be purely celibate, it's fraught with danger, because you're essentially suppressing one of the most natural functions of being human. We continue. We know the case of an Ari Hierofphant who hated women and often made statements such as, "I kick women around." He preached a doctrine and his followers adored him as a god. He always lived surrounded by adolescents, and so he spent his time until the police discovered everything. He was a transvestite, a homosexual corrupter of minors. Nevertheless, he had the pride of all infrasexuals, the pride of feeling super transcendent, ineffable, divine. So now we come to chapter 5, and I'm just reading selected excerpts, so I'm skipping through. Chapter 5 is titled Normal Sexuality. The sexual energy is dangerously volatile and potentially explosive. During the secret act, during sexual ecstasy, the couple is surrounded by this tremendous and terribly divine energy. In these moments of supreme joy and of ardent kisses that fire the depths of the soul, we can retain that marvelous light to completely purify and transform ourselves. When we spill the glass of Hermes, when the loss occurs, the light of the gods departs, leaving open the doors so that the red and sanguineous light of Lucifer can enter the home. These are some pretty serious consequences of spilling the seed. Lucifer entering the home. The enchantment disappears and disillusion and disenchantment arrive. After a little while, the man and woman begin the path of adultery. Their home has become an inferno. It is a characteristic of nature to mobilize enormous reserves of creative energy to create any cosmos. However, of its enormous reserves, it only uses an infinitesimal quantity to carry out its creations. Thus, man loses 6 or 7 million spermatozoa in a seminal ejaculation. However, only one infinitesimal spermatozoa is needed to engender a child. So here we're getting into Immaculate Conception. This is a extremely well-kept secret that I never encountered before I came across this book. So for all of you curious about how it's possible to retain for the rest of your life, even if you want kids, this is it. In Lemuria, no human being ejaculated the semen. Then the couples united sexually in the temples to create. In those instances, the lunar hierarchies knew how to use one spermatozoa and one ovum to create without the necessity of reaching orgasm and seminal ejaculation. No one spilled the semen. The sexual act was a sacrament that could only be realized within the temple. Women in that age gave birth to children without pain, and the serpent arose victoriously through the medulla channel. In that age, man had not left Eden. The whole of nature obeyed him, and he knew neither pain nor sin. So he's referring to man in his fourth dimensional state. That's what it's been described as. The Eden was actually just a higher plane of being that we previously existed on before we ate the forbidden fruit and descended down to the third dimension. In that age, man had not left Eden. The whole of nature obeyed him. He knew neither pain nor sin. It was the tenebrous Lucifers who taught man how to spill the semen. The original sin of our first parents was the crime of spilling the semen. This is so foundational. This is what it all comes back to. That is fornication. When the mart of paradise fornicated, he then entered the kingdom of the Lucifers. The man of today is Luciferic. It is absurd to spill 6 or 7 million spermatozoa when only one is needed to create. One single spermatozoa escapes easily from the sexual glands without the need to spill the semen. When man returns to the point of departure, when he re-establishes the sexual system of Eden, the sacred serpent of Kundalini will arise victoriously again to convert us into gods. The sexual system of Eden is normal sexuality. The sexual system of the Luciferic man is absolutely abnormal. Sexual fantasy produces impotence of a psychosexual type. People with that kind of illness have normal erections. They are apparently normal men, but in the moment in which they try to connect the penis and the vulva, the erection abates, making the phallus fall, leaving the man in the most horrible state of desperation. They have lived in sexual fantasy, and when they really find themselves facing the crude sexual reality, which has nothing to do with fantasy, they become confused and are unable to properly respond to reality. This is a good case for going God mode, letting go of lust. He's essentially saying that someone who fantasizes becomes flaccid in sex, becomes impotent on a psychological and sexual level. The sexual sense is formidably subtle and tremendously rapid, thanks to its very fine and imponderable energy. The molecular level in which the sexual sense manifests is millions of times faster than thought waves. The logical mind and the fantasy are stumbling blocks for the sexual sense. When the logical mind, when all of its reasoning, or when the sexual fantasy with all of its erotic illusions wants to control the sexual sense, or channel it into their illusions, then it is inevitably destroyed. The logical mind and sexual fantasy destroy the sexual sense when they try to put it at their service. Psychosexual impotence is the most terrifying tragedy that can afflict fanatical men or women of the purely rational type of person. The struggle of many monks, nuns, anchorites, pseudo-yogis, etc., to entrap sex in their religious fanaticism, to confine it to the prison of their penitences, to muzzle it or sterilize it, to prohibit all creative manifestation, etc., converts the fanatic into a slave of his own passions, into a slave of sex incapable of thinking of anything else other than sex. Such people are sexual fanatics, the degenerates of infrasexuality. These people discharge themselves every night with revolting nocturnal emissions, or contract homosexual vices, or masturbate miserably. To want to imprison sex is like wanting to trap the sun. A man like this is the most abject slave of sex, with neither benefit nor real pleasure. A man like this is an unhappy sinner. A woman like this is a sterile mule. He doesn't muck around, does he? A vile slave of that which she wants to enslave, sex. The enemies of the Holy Spirit are people of the abyss. For these people it would have been better they had not been born, or a rock been tied to their neck and thrown to the bottom of the ocean. The human being must learn to live sexually. The age of sex, the new era of Aquarius, has arrived. The planet Uranus controls the sexual glands and is the regent of the constellation of Aquarius. Thus, sexual alchemy is in fact the science of the new age of Aquarius. Sexual magic will be officially accepted in the universities of the new Aquarian era. The sexual energy is the finest energy of the infinite cosmos. Sexual energy can transform us into angels or into demons. The image of the truth is found in the sexual energy. The cosmic design of Adam Christ is deposited in the sexual energy. The Son of Man, the Superman, is born of normal sex. The Superman could never be born of infrasexuals. The kingdom of infrasexuals is the abyss. The Greek poet Homer said, "It is better to be a beggar on earth than a king in the empire of shadows." This empire is the tenebrous world of the infrasexuals. So we'll leave it there. That highlights these two different types of sexuality: infrasexuality and normal sexuality. Like I said, this book is dangerous. It steps on a lot of toes. It burns a lot of sacred cows. But the nature of the truth is that it is disruptive. I encourage you to examine some of these beliefs that you've taken on about chastity being the highest path, about sex being degenerative in and of itself, or something purely for reproduction or purely for pleasure. It's much, much more than that. And we're going to continue to see that as we dive deeper into this book, The Perfect Matrimony. If you want to be part of a community where we're discussing this, jump in the Sons of God. If you want to get my condensed form of The Perfect Matrimony, which has been tailored to men specifically, check out my book. The link is below. It's called God Mode, Raising the Fiery Serpent. And if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, check out the link below. We can do some deep diving into some of your own blockages to embodying your full sexuality as a man. Extremely potent. I'll see you on the next one.